Mention, thanks a lot for inviting us. I'm very happy you are just as motivated as we are to ramp up the hydrogen market. So let me explain H2Up to you. So H2 is obvious hydrogen. Up means ramping up the hydrogen market. And why do we write up with 3 Ps? It's because we're running private-public partnerships, and that reflects then in our title. So we accelerate the green hydrogen deployment in emerging economies in partnership with the private sector. And we're sharing today some examples that are specifically interesting for you in the MENA region. So today we have 3 speakers that will be on my side, Philipp Miltrup and Veit Raisch. And Philipp is mainly responsible for all technical matters such as process engineering and systemic integration of Power-to-X. And his motivation to work in the green hydrogen field and Power-to-X is to drive transformation of carbon-intensive sectors. And Philipp is also our country focal point for Southeast Asia. Veit has been an energy expert for German Development Corporation and the private sector since 2015. He's now in charge of the implementation of the H2Uppp program in Morocco and coordinates the project activities in the MENA region. Myself, I've been with the GIZ for 8 years and before in technical research institutions and 10 years in chemical industry. And I joined H2Uppp with the vision to help defossilizing industry. And as a focal point for India, I'm happy that the subcontinent is already a huge contributor to the green hydrogen production. One quick word about who finances this initiative. So this is the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy. And why is that? In order to achieve the Paris climate targets and further develop markets for green hydrogen technologies, targeted support is needed to identify viable production and utilization pathways, and to pinpoint project opportunities and develop also business models. And this is precisely where the implementation of the International Hydrogen Ramp-Up Program, short H2Uppp, comes in. And it's commissioned by the BMWE and implemented by the German Society for International Cooperation. And H2Uppp is aimed...
Sorry to interrupt, Claudio. If you could share your screen, I think it logged off when we started.
I am very sorry. So H2Uppp is aimed in particular at projects in emerging and developing countries, and especially those projects that are in an early stage. And we provide support there with pre-feasibility studies, project scouting to facilitate market entry. The projects receive both technical and political support during the idea development and then in the project preparation phase as well. Our timeline for today will be, so the introduction is already through. Philipp will then next present the program H2Uppp, the program logic, the phases, our fields of action calls. We will then show you the big picture, so an overview on all PPPs that we're currently working on, which will be 36 PPPs, but this will be too much. So we will then zoom in and look into focus PPPs that are much more of interest for you and for the MENA region. In between, you will have the chance to ask a question. We have a dedicated questions and answer sessions there. And also after the focus PPP session, we will have a much longer, so 15-minute Q&A session. And I would like to discuss with you what we presented to you. And with that, I would like to hand over to Philipp to introduce you into the program.
Great, thank you, Claudio. Maybe we can go directly to the next slide. I think the key figures we had. Exactly here. So before we are diving into the PPPs and to our project we've been carrying out with the private sector, I think it's important to also understand how H2Up works, what we are doing, how the program is structured, and that's why we have this short introduction before we are then talking about the specific projects. So H2Up's main objective is to further develop markets for green hydrogen and power-to-X technologies, especially in our partner countries and in developing and emerging countries. And we do this by working, as I said, closely with the private sector. This is our unique selling point, so to say, and by strengthening also these partnerships. And at the same time, we aim to establish and expand also import-export relationships with Germany and Europe. And to achieve this, our approach focuses on three key steps. And Claudio mentioned it at the beginning, the 3 PPPs in H2Up. This stands for our public-private partnership, but it also stands for our field of actions where we are active. So first, we identify promising projects. Then second, we support their development. So this is then the project development part. And third, we facilitate project implementation as well as trade. So this is then the project support and trade part. And these 3 PPPs also represent then, as I said, the field of action we are working in, where I will also come to in a minute. Next slide, please. So our program is based on the idea that innovative projects with the private sector can help to kick off or kickstart green hydrogen markets. However, I would say it's still a relatively new market, and companies, both European but also local companies, often face still the high risk and high transaction cost when they are trying to enter this market. And to address this, H2Up supports green hydrogen and PTX projects of all sizes. So we're talking about small scale, medium scale and large scale projects, but particularly, and I think this is really important, in the early stages of development. So we work closely with the private sector to reduce the project development costs for German, European, and also the local companies. And at the same time, we had to build local expertise and also to strengthen really the capacities in the partner countries. And then as a result, and especially also through our public-private partnerships, the PPP instrument, we are helping to build a pipeline of projects in partner countries that have already completed then the initial pre-feasibility stage. Next one. So here are our 3 field of actions in a bit more detail. As I said, we have the project identification parts where we mainly focus on mobilizing companies. We identifying project opportunities and also business models, also in cooperation with the AHKs on site. And connecting the right stakeholders, right? Connecting project developers and to technology providers, investors, potential off-takers. So the goal is really to find and also to structure promising project ideas and to bring the right stakeholders together. And then in the second part, in the project development part, so I would say it's our flagship field of action, so to say. And this includes then the clarifying the feasibility of replicable project approaches, building expertise in project development, leveraging also private capital through company co-financing, and as I've mentioned, developing this project pipeline. And the aim here is to make projects development ready and to also build the necessary knowledge. And then last but not least, we have the project support and trade part. And this covers then the trade related questions around hydrogen exports, ensuring also local acceptance and addressing regulatory and investment risks. And the objective here is to improve the framework conditions and to facilitate at the end also the market access. The next slide, please. Yeah, I think this graphic shows quite well how H2Uppp works with the companies through the PPPs, as well as through our 2 other field of actions to support, and I want to emphasize this again, the early stages of project development cycle for green hydrogen and Power-to-X projects before the major investments are needed. And you can see it here when you look at the time frame of the project cycles. So the financing needs really increase when we are coming to the construction operational phase in the timeline. And what H2Uppp is doing, we are supporting in the early development, the scoping, and then the late development and also piloting, also to de-risk then at the end the phases of construction and operation. So, and then at the later stage instruments such as the funding guideline, for example, or H2 Global come into play once the project move towards construction and market entry. But really the foundation can be laid through H2Uppp in this way. And in the next slide, it's just a quick recap of how PPPs work within H2Uppp and also the value they create. So we talked about it. The first one, the PPP support project development across the entire green hydrogen value chain. And Claudio will explain this in a minute when he's showing really the diversity of our PPP portfolio. They focus on key technical questions through pre-feasibility studies and help to build the technical know-how needed for the green hydrogen and PTX projects. And this is also an important point that the results that are created throughout the PPPs are being published and can also be used for other developers, investors, technology providers. And I think this is a really important point because we are working, of course, with public money, with taxpayers' money. So we cannot simply support one single company to help to achieve their developments. So we need to make everything that we've created within the PPP, we have to make it available and also to have a benefit at the end for other companies, technology providers, investors, and so on and so forth. And within this PPPs, the public contribution ranges from 50,000 euros to 2 million, either as a cost reimbursement or also as an in-kind support, where GIZ is then taking over certain working packages within this PPP. And what's important in this sense is that the companies must contribute at least 50% of the total project costs themselves. And this structure, we had this experience with this structure that it mobilizes really also the private capital with a leverage effect of around 1 to 1.5, which we have experienced in phase number 1. So if the public contribution is around 200,000 euros, then the private partners contribute roughly 300,000 euros. Yeah, and I think that's it already from my side. As I said, just a short overview for you to understand also how we work. And now I would like to hand over to Claudio again.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Philip. So this was a quick introduction into our program. We have a couple of minutes to clarify questions that you have at that stage. Before we go on and dive a bit deeper into the projects that we would like to present to you. Are there any questions or remarks that you already have?
Claudio, one second. Would you want to present the world map first, and then we go into the questions, right? You're not sharing exactly.
Let's do that.
Yeah, perfect. I think then we can condense it a little bit, no?
Exactly. So are there any questions that you have at that stage towards Philip? You can also type in the chat, of course. Then we'll try and moderate questions a bit. maybe to give you an idea for how long this has been running. So we are currently in our second phase. So the first program in the first phase was running for some years, and now we are running for another 3 years. We're doing right now also an extension to Brazil for 1 more year. And on the world map, you already see where we are active at. And if you don't have any questions at this stage, I would simply go on, and then we will have more time for discussion afterwards. And please don't hold back. If you have a question that comes to you later, please type it in the chat, and Veit and Philip and I, we will try and answer those questions then as they come up. So you see here that we are working with some small players, but we're also working with big players like Siemens here, for example, or ThyssenKrupp. We're working basically in the LATAM region very intensively. We are based with a couple of projects in the MENA region itself, but also in Namibia and in South Africa. So Southern Africa is a region for us where we are focusing on. We do some global projects. Where you see here with Perspective and RENAC, we are working globally. And then a focus region where Philip is responsible for is Southeast Asia. And I am working in close cooperation with the colleagues in India. And here again, you have an overview. And when you look at the companies, and I will show that to you in a minute. So we are trying not to only work in a certain stage of the product value chain, but throughout the entire value chain. And this can be seen in this slide here. So we are working from feedstock through production with different products you see here. We're working in ammonia and methanol, but also other hydrocarbons with power to X, in storage and pipeline, and also then in the usage of H2. Because if we don't have off-takers, we don't foster our producers. So maybe to give you just a quick overview here. So these are 34 PPPs that we've been running. So the ones with a tick are already closed, and they are published as studies, and all of those studies are of course available to everyone. The other ones are still running. Some of them till the end of the year, some a bit longer. So in the feedstock area, we are working, for example, also on the desalination and using the residues. In trade and certification, we're working on digital evidence. We're working on a trading platform that I will present a little bit later. We do a lot of training. We even set up a training hub in Vietnam. We're working on several ammonia projects, focusing then always on different topics. So, for example, on off-grid, on-grid, on the carbon market, on the transport. So we're really looking into what is needed in this part of the value chain, and pick out PPPs that will foster other companies exactly in that area. So we try and close every gap and try to answer all the questions that come up along the value chain. We're working then on the hydrocarbons. So, for example, on Syncrude, but also on methanol, further e-fuels like eSAF, and then also sometimes on here our last project that we took on board is the last one in the products and methanol column, which is local community strategies and how to involve them in the in the searching for land, in the searching for sources, in water resource management. We work on storage and pipeline. So one project that will also be presented to you is on LOHC storage and transport, focusing on Morocco and Egypt. And then finally, we look into usage of hydrogen. And that can be from hotels or resorts, it can be in the ceramics industry. In general, it can also be then on shipping, but also in usage in ferries, for example, for using in metalworking or in other industrial processes. And to give you an idea on which ones we will take focus, so we took some time to evaluate how can we get this across the whole value chain to you. And that's how we picked the projects and how we will present them then also to you. Are there questions at the moment?
I think there's one question. Ah, yeah, Ali Habib. Okay.
Hello, thank you for this nice presentation. Quick question for methanol and e-fuels. Do you help in sourcing carbon for this fuel, carbon capture storage, DAC, BECS, or whatever?
Yeah, maybe I can answer this question. So we have currently one PPP in Brazil where we are focusing exactly on this matter. There is a sugar cane fermentation plant, and this sugar cane fermentation also emits a lot of CO2. And with the CCS technology, we are capturing the CO2 from the fermentation process and then using it to produce e-methanol. Generally speaking, with GIZ, I think sometimes we are a bit limited when it comes to CCS. For example, we do not look into CCS for the cement industry because of lock-in effects. For example, we can use other cement forms like LC3 cement and so on and so forth to reduce CO2 emissions, process-related CO2 emissions. So that's why within GIZ, we are rather focusing on CCS from biogenic residues, right? So this is maybe one limitation, but we are working with it, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Yep, thanks for the question. So yeah, actually, carbon sourcing is a big topic for us at H2Uppp. Tiziana, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thanks. More of a very general questions. How do you identify the companies that you are approaching?
We do calls. So we do calls. So we announce them through the media, through social media. Sometimes we focus on certain topics to actually close the gap. Our last call was actually focused in the region of LATAM. So for our last call, I think we had 51 companies applying for funding, and we went through a very extensive evaluation process, which looks at sustainability criteria, which looks at innovation, which looks at location, and of course it looks at gaps. Where do we have gaps? Where do we have questions that need to be answered, and how can we close this question? And so if there's many questions on carbon sourcing, we try and jump into that topic.
Thank you. And is there a call coming up for the MENA region? And if so, maybe we could share it through the MEDGEM network as well.
Yeah. Wonderful. That's very kind. So in case we're doing a MENA region call, we will definitely share it through you. You have the bigger network. And we only just now closed the Brazil call, so I frankly don't know when the next call is opening, but we will let you know.
Thank you.
And maybe just in addition to what Claudio just said, we also try to extend our outreach to the industry in Germany via the hydrogen networks and associations.
Okay, thanks, Veit. If there are no more questions, I would like to go on to the focus PPPs, and we would like to start with K2Uppp.
Yes.
Please.
Thanks, Claudio. I will take over again. So we have not only for this call, we have not only selected PPPs that we have in the MENA region, and there's one reason for it, because as I said in the beginning, we are really trying with our PPPs in other countries to create a replicable concept that can also be extended to other regions, to other countries. And that's why we selected a very diverse pick of PPPs we have currently in the portfolio. We've been concluded already. And the first one we would like to briefly present to you is it's a project that we implemented together with a German company called K2Uppp in Chile. Focusing on desalination and also at the end the valorization of reject brine. And we carried out this project under a service agreement, and the total project volume was just under 400,000 euros, with around 200,000 euros provided by GIZ to K2Uppp. And the project was completed within a period of 18 months. And main objective here was to evaluate the feasibility of using waste brine and converting it back into valuable products. And the idea behind it is to reduce environmental impact and at the same time also improve the overall economic viability of green hydrogen projects that rely on seawater for hydrogen production. Because at the end, when we create valuable project out of a waste stream, that can of course generate additional income at the end for the overall economics of the projects. And that's why in this PPP we work with K2Uppp to explore ways to increase the value of this reject brine and to make the entire process more sustainable, both ecologically but also economically. In other words, we were looking at how this brine can be transformed into useful products instead of simply being treated as waste. And if you go to the next slide, here, yeah, exactly. Here's a bit more detailed information about the project set up in Chile regarding the water situation in general. But I think what's more interesting is the process flow diagram, which we see in the right corner. And how the concept works. I think this is nice to get a better understanding of the whole project concept. So we have the desalination plant on the left side. At one input is of course the seawater, and we get two outputs. One is the purified water, and the other one is the reject brine. And usually the reject brine, as I said, is treated as waste. But in this case, it is fed into a salt plant, and in these steps the salts are recovered and also separated from the reject brine. So we have different salts that are crystallized and chemically extracted, for example sodium chloride, magnesium, sulfates, and so on and so forth. I don't want to go into detail here. And then the residual brine, which still contains valuable trace elements or chemicals, is then passed through the next stage. This is then the byproducts plants. And here the residual brine is further processed, often with addition of other chemicals, to produce at the end then higher value byproducts. For example, in the case of Chile, we had some magnesium compounds that were then used for industrial applications. There were some lithium and other trace elements or special chemicals that have been used at the end for fertilizer or even for the battery production. If you go to the next slide, you can see how the PPP is structured into the three working packages. So where K2Uppp worked on within this PPP consortium. We had the conceptual design study where we developed a process concept for the brine utilization. Then There was a techno-economic pre-feasibility evaluation, so assessing the technical and also economic viability of the concept. And afterwards, the stakeholder engagement, where the results were shared with relevant partners and stakeholders. And I mean, looking ahead, the project is already moving, so to say, in the next phase. So there is follow-up funding from Chile that has been secured to continue and further develop this approach. So we can clearly see in this example that we laid the foundation with H2Uppp, and now it's being followed up not only in Chile but also in Brazil. It was presented at the Hydrogen Africa conference. There's some interest in this concept. So overall, there is already a strong interest and visibility, and the first concrete impacts are expected this year in 2026. Exactly, and this is just a picture of how such a facility would look like. If you go to the next slide, this is another PPP project we've been carried out in Brazil together with a German biogas project developer Miele, where we investigated the production of green methanol. And this is a cooperation agreement between Miele and GIZ, and it's also one of the largest PPPs we have in our portfolio, with a total project volume of just over 2 million euros and a public contribution of around 23%. And just to explain you a little bit about the concept, if you go to the next slide, just to have an idea how this actually works. Maybe you have heard of it, I don't know, but as you can see in the upper left corner, we have the pig manure that contains many organic materials such as feed residues, we have feces inside, urine. And when this material is processed in the biogas plant under anaerobic conditions, it produces biogas. And this biogas mainly consists of the methane, which is our CH4, and the carbon dioxide, our CO2. And the biogas is then cleaned to remove some unwanted substances, and the CO2 is separated from the methane so it can be reused later. And in parallel, if we look at the lower left corner, of course, we also have our hydrogen production, and in this case, we mainly had renewable electricity in Brazil from wind and solar. And this is then used to split water into green hydrogen and oxygen through electrolysis. And then finally, the biogenic CO2, which we have from the pig manure, reacts with the green hydrogen in a chemical reactor. And this is then at the end forming the green syncrude or green methanol, which was the end product. If you go to the next slide, here I think it shows quite well how the scope of the project was divided between Miele and GIZ on the other hand. So Miele was mainly responsible to develop a replicable technical and also economic concept to provide biogas from methane from pig manure. So in the slide before you saw the upper string, this was mainly the part of Miele. And GIZ was mainly responsible to develop the basic design and also do the techno-economic assessment of hydrogen production and also the synthesis process for the production of e-methanol and green methanol. And yeah, I think this is also a nice example of a PPP which also goes on even after H2Uppp. So currently the first biogas plant is under construction in Brazil. The project is being carried out right now with a French hydrogen project developer. So they are focusing on the hydrogen and on the synthesis side, and also already some off-takers have been identified for the first phase of expansion. And again, I think it shows quite nicely that the foundation again is laid with H2Uppp, and then the further development will continue. And with that, I would like now to hand over to my colleague Veit. Thank you. We can questions maybe now or afterwards. Claudio, what do you think?
I would suggest we collect the questions and do them afterwards, yeah?
So maybe Ali, afterwards we can clarify the questions if that's okay for you.
Perfect, no problem.
Okay, great.
You can also type them in the chat if you like.
Okay, if you would permit, Claudio, I'm trying to take over the presentation.
You should be able now.
Okay, it works, perfect. Okay, then I get started. The next PPP I'd like to present is about unlocking carbon markets for fertilizers produced with green ammonia. The idea of this PPP is basically to develop a methodology for the Paris Agreement regarding renewable ammonia-based fertilizer projects. And the intended impact is that fertilizer producers have access to the carbon market to finance the investment of switching to green ammonia, and that the income from carbon markets could again help them to make projects more bankable. Yeah, as you can see on the left side, the contribution of the company Perspectives basically is to really develop the whole methodology based on real projects, and then getting the approval actually of the UNFCCC supervisory body, and to have all stakeholders engaged from the green fertilizer industry from various countries. And GLZ contributes financially and gives the linkage to the Global Carbon Market Program and NDCs. So I'm trying to go to the next slide now. Somehow not working, or maybe you can do it for me still, Claudio. Somehow not working. Yeah, okay, perfect. Thank you. So why doing this? I mean, on the left side, you can see that there's a certain investment barrier, and the production costs, there's a barrier for the production costs due to the investment costs. And on the other side, you can gain carbon revenues, yeah, so to say that the revenues can help to decrease costs. But however, by the time the PPP was started, no existing carbon credit methodology for green ammonia in the fertilizer production was available. So that's exactly why this PPP was getting into place. Next point, please. If you could go ahead, Claudio. And basically, I mean, the idea is to sell these carbon credits to private sector buyers or governments. And the market forecast for the pricing is between $15 to $45 per ton, depending on the market segment and project type. Next slide, please. So here you can see basically the whole carbon project cycle, and the first part of it is that you need a methodology. What is part of the methodology? Basically, it's a summary and description and scope about the applicability conditions, the sources, references, and then you need also a baseline scenario for the emissions, for the downward adjustment and the emission reductions. And at the end of the day, as a company applying this, you need to be able to demonstrate the additionality of renewable energies, and you need to be capable of meeting the monitoring requirements. Next slide, please. And to show you that this is actually happening, just quickly where we are at the timeline now. So with Perspectives, the methodology has been already conceptualized 2025, and now this year by September or by July, we hope to achieve the approval of UNFCCC, and after that, we are ready for knowledge dissemination and to spread it in the industry. Claudio? Well, just to show you the impact of this, I mean, we've been looking into mainly India, Egypt, and Morocco, and theoretically, the global potential is to save 300 million tons CO2 per year. But this is just generally, I mean, you're all aware of this, that there are quite some saving potentials in the ammonia industry when it comes to fertilizers. Next slide, please. Okay, yeah, basically that's it for perspective. Then I would like to get to the next project example, which is Soventix. Now we're going to Latin America, in particular Chile. And this PPP was already accomplished by the end of 2024. And basically, it focused on the concept and master plan for green hydrogen and an ammonia industrial park. So meaning the production of ammonia in an industrial park. And it included basically a regional infrastructure analysis and the conceptual design of the production plant and a techno-economic assessment. So next slide, please. Talking about the master plan of the industrial park in Mejaunes in Chile, basically, as you can see on the map, the location offers everything regarding suitable infrastructure. So you have solar PV plants in high solar potential areas. You have the ammonia production close to the port at the coastline. And you also have already the transmission lines. The regional analyses that were made before confirmed there's also like a logistical feasibility, and the key goal was to lower the financing risks for investors by having a park that would allow faster access to land, also shorter permitting by having this industrial hub approach. And yeah, reducing also community risks, social risk, environmental aspects, and to have basically a shared infrastructure of railroad, port, storage, electricity, and water supply. Next slide, please. So yeah, just quickly, for time reason, to also show you, to go a bit more detail regarding the port. So an already existing infrastructure was used by the adaptation of an existing solid bulk terminal. And also it was realized that additional capacities were needed. So already a new liquid bulk storage terminal is already planned. So that just shows that it's really necessary to include the port planning and infrastructure aspects already in the early concept phase. Next slide, please. And yeah, basically, when it comes to the concept of the industrial park itself, just this visualization shows again how it's like an integrated system. And the before mentioned PV plants are also connected with the power purchase agreements, and you have also a desalination plant. So I just would like to highlight once more what is especially interesting here is, or maybe interesting for replication, is this hub approach, right? It shows the importance of integrated planning, and that if you have an integrated approach, not only for a standalone park, but also a scalable approach, you can benefit from the joint infrastructure. And here in this case, in the first phase, capacity of 320 kilotons per annum is foreseen. And the second phase, it's going to double. And now in the next slide, I would like to show you the impact, the main takeaways on the production costs, because this integrated approach allows basically to come down with the costs for USD per ton for ammonia between 500 and 1,600. So overall, even if the byproducts that are commercialized are also taken into account, we could end up within the range of the lowest estimations by IRENA for green ammonia, which is 720. So we could even get below that. Of course, one must say this is still 20 to 60% higher of the normal conventional ammonia, but you can see that is very, when it comes to green ammonia, that is very compatible on the global market, thanks to this approach. And in the next slide, yeah, basically, what are the replication aspects? You can blueprint this shared infrastructure approach. We have also like the full report available. And just one last point I would like to highlight is also the learning was that the governance and planning was also, it was really important to include all stakeholders, not only the project developers, but also the public decision makers from the early beginning that allowed this infrastructure planning, but also the permitting. Okay, leaving Chile, coming to the MENA region, which might be also particularly interesting for you. We also have this PPP with Hydrogenious, and basically in Morocco and Egypt. And before I get into it, just would like to maybe once more highlight that liquid organic hydrogen carriers generally enable green hydrogen to be chemically bound to a liquid carrier transported by ship instead of pipelines, stored modularly, and then basically released at the end when you need it to recover hydrogen again as gas for usage. Just want to highlight this once more because it could be like an alternative to conventional transport methods or pipelines, and so yet it has not been fully explored for the case of Egypt and Morocco and what role it could play. However, it's also still quite the niche, technology niche, and that's why we really want to get a bit more of a very objective idea on how this could work or could be helpful. If you could please go ahead, Claudio. And basically Hydrogenious, who is a key market player in this area, will look into the identification of potential sites, the process design, and very important, the analysis regarding EU import regulations. Next slide, please. So it's basically a pre-feasibility study, and maybe just some background of the scope. Basically, as I mentioned, storage, transport, and port infrastructure will be key aspects of this already running PPP. And at the end of the day, we want to see as a result the techno-economic performance and the CO2 footprint. Next slide, please. So basically I already mentioned that. If you could go ahead, Claudio. Yeah, exactly. So the intended effects, that's something maybe to highlight also. Basically, we want to reduce with this PPP the entry barriers for LOHC projects and identify the regulatory challenges in Morocco and Egypt together with the authorities, and then to see also the scaling potential would be, of course, once this regulatory uncertainty is straightened out, there could be strong industrial synergies, for instance, in Egypt with the Suez Canal zone, and also in Morocco when it comes to the harbors that are chosen in Morocco. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier, this could be really an alternative to pipelines, modular shipping for the export to Europe. Next slide, please. Yeah, and that's it from my side. Handing back to you, Claudio.
Thank you, Veit. So we're coming already to our last two PPPs. I will present those, and for the sake of saving some time and having a discussion afterwards, I will rush a bit through this. Nonetheless, I would like to give you the whole picture, so I will briefly afterwards send you a fact sheet on those two PPPs. So this PPP is paving the way for an Indian hydrogen index and a trading platform. So we are looking into a comprehensive study on the Indian H2 market, and at the end of the project, we want to have an Indian H2 trading roadmap. And for doing this, we engaged a lot with H2 stakeholders. So why is this actually necessary? The challenge really is the absence of hydrogen exchange platform and the absence of reliable price indices. There is a lack of well-developed hydrogen community that exchanges regularly, and that is based on numbers and facts. And there is still regulatory and policy uncertainties that actually hinder the India's dynamic energy landscape to really develop. So we brought together here in consultations off-takers, suppliers, and policymakers on green hydrogen trading, and worked out what needs to be tackled really. So the strategic objective was to define a business case for a transparent hydrogen trading platform. We identified a great paradoxon, which is that producers require a linear flat production for good bankability, whereas consumers like steel and urea industry face a cyclical, seasonal demand cycles. So, and this needs all to be taken up into the idea of building this platform. So we went through interviews and built a foundation that now should be built up in the following month. The last PPP I would like to present today is happening in two countries, in Chile and Brazil. We're working there together with Vilo. You probably know them from pumps, one of the biggest pump producers. What we're doing there is to look into H2 power plants. So they are offering scalable modular green hydrogen technologies. And we went into the market to estimate what is the local demand in each country. And then we also wanted to look at what's the development for small and medium-sized industrial hydrogen facilities. I will jump over that really quickly. To give you an idea about the technology itself, the H2 power plant uses electrolysis to convert green electricity generated from solar, obviously, or wind and water into green hydrogen and oxygen. And when required, the hydrogen can be converted back into electrical energy via a fuel cell. Secondly, the waste heat can be used for heating purposes or converted into cooling on site. And also, of course, the oxygen can be used likewise. The nice thing is that Vilo has developed an industrial size H2 power plant within its own plant, and this can be also visited. So, for example, during the Rotterdam or the Hamburg Fair, you can ask them to take a look at the plant. So what we are currently doing there is the analysis of the green hydrogen market and take a look at which industry is probably using this. And this is already a little idea on how to scale up to the MENA industries. So we're currently working out case studies where this modular hydrogen solution can be integrated. And we found that there's good examples in metal, glass, food and paper industry, but also in mechanical engineering, in mining and beverages, but also other manufacturing studies. So this study will be out very soon, and we of course are really happy to share it with you and for you to understand which size and which necessities you have to have in your plant to use actually this modular H2 power plant. Since it goes also beyond H2 production and it integrates hydrogen, oxygen, heat, energy storage and usage, it is very likely that it makes total sense in industrial parks. And so for the MENA region, there are several industrial parks where you could put in this industrial ready solution and directly work with it. And with that, I would like to pass on back to Veit, who will very quickly summarize the key findings, and afterwards we have time for discussion.
Yes, now we have presented quite a lot of PPP examples, and thank you still for bearing with us with all this information. We also try to abstract a bit the learnings of the various PPPs, and we have some points that we would also like to provide to you. One key point is that PPPs show that scalable green hydrogen projects are not only built through pilot assets, but also through regulatory readiness and practical project development tools, which can then also be replicated. So basically, when it comes to bankable techno-economic blueprints, we have some general learnings from our PPPs when it comes to the pre-commercial phases, feed studies, and so forth, but also shared infrastructure strategies. The value of PPPs really lie in the output that can be used by other actors, also when it comes to certification concepts, infrastructure assessments, and capacity building formats. And of course, PPPs repeatedly show that market access depends on compliance with the evolving EU and international requirements. Regardless, we're talking about renewable fuels, guarantees of origin, or proof of sustainability and carbon market methodologies. Right. Next slide.
Veit, sorry for interrupting. What do you think? Maybe we can share the presentation also afterwards, because we only have like 9 minutes left for a discussion.
Okay,
so
that's the last slide, Philip.
Okay.
So,
yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Basically. Yeah. So basically, PPPs enable companies to enter emerging markets, and also can leverage private funds. And yeah, from one PPP to many projects, Just to give 2 more examples that we also have some follow-ups really by the PPPs or after the PPPs. The example Soventics I mentioned earlier, I presented earlier. Now the Chilean Development Bank, Corfo, also follows up on this concept and goes in with concrete funding, and also more project partners joined. And Mele, the construction of PPP with Mele, the construction has started, and also the state of Paraná included the concept in its national action plan, and off-takers are identified. So yeah, to cut it short, Philip, then back to you guys.
Thank you, Veit. So now we have time for questions. Please, please type them also in the chat. We can also come back to you afterwards. And what do you think, Raya, Vandali? We can also stay with you a couple of minutes longer.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah. So I don't really mind to staying 5 to 10 minutes longer, or even longer. So it's important to exchange, I think. Ali, you've got a question.
Yes, actually, I got several questions for, I think one for each project. So the first one, which is for Brian, does it require certain scale to be financially viable? Because, for example, hydrogen desalination plants have a large amount of water to be desalinated. So could this technology be applied for smaller scale? Should I go for all questions at once or one by one?
Maybe we can address this question directly.
Okay.
So your question is whether this is also feasible for small scale projects. Yeah. And this was especially the case also in Chile. So they tested the small scale applicability. I don't know the numbers by heart, but what I can do is definitely share with you the end report and also the techno-economic outcome in terms of levelized cost, for example, if you're interested in that.
Yes. That's
yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Okay. Second one, that's biogas. So you have biogas, and then you do upgrade. You capture CO2. This CO2 is now like combined with H2 for a product. What do you do with CH4? Because if it's burned, it will release emission. So this emission, I think, should be accounted in the whole life cycle assessment. So what you are doing with this CH4?
Exactly. You're completely right. And this is also a topic we discussed with our sustainability expert, also regarding RFMBO in the context of RED 2 and RED 3, right? About this whole emission accounting. In this specific case, we really focus only on the usage of or the production of e-methanol and not focusing on the methane part. And this also at the end provided some problems when it comes to the certification of the end products, right? Yeah. Exactly. And so that's also why in the presentation, I said we were producing green methanol and e-methanol. So the e-methanol is accounted as an RFMBO under the RED 2, RED 3 context. And the green methanol is only it's lower carbon. It had a lower carbon content, yes, but it's not considered as an RFMBO because of this emission calculation methodology, and also because of the methane, which was not taken into account. And also here, I would really like to exchange even more on this topic because I think it's really interesting too. I could also share the end report afterwards with you. We can do a follow-up meeting as you wish, because I think it's really nice to exchange about this topic. Yeah.
Okay, it's totally important. Next one, it's about green ammonia, access to carbon market. If you sold like carbon credit for ammonia, I think it will not be qualified to be exported as green ammonia. Am I right?
Maybe could you a bit more go into details with elaborate a bit further about your question?
Okay, I will produce green ammonia. So this green ammonia, I will use the carbon credit and sell it in the market, right? So this ammonia should be used in local market. It cannot be exported because already it's carbon credit, it's used. Am I right or wrong?
Actually, no. It's for export. It's feasible for export.
It's feasible for export, but you sold already the carbon credit for it. The carbon saved is already sold. So another one will claim it. So it's actually, it should be like gray ammonia, for example. So if you export it, it's carbon credit, it's already used. It's about regulation. So that's why I'm asking, because it's confusing a little bit.
It very much depends, of course, if I would rather say if you have it for local usage, right? You can only account it once. That's the thing. If you have it for local usage, you can only account it for once. If you export it, and then you sell it to the customer and also account for it with a carbon credit mechanism, then you cannot account for it. Then you can also account it also singular, not again. That's the difference. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I'm done. So sorry for bothering you with my questions, but
no worries.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's not bothering. It's very necessary to discuss. Vandali, you have a question.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. Very interesting set of projects. I liked especially the one using brine in Chile. And I was wondering about the process. So basically, it starts with a certain developer who has an idea for a project that approaches H2Up through the calls, and H2Up suggests a certain intervention, let's say, or how does it? How does the process look like?
I mean, this would be one approach. As I said, we have this 3 field of actions, and in the first field of action, we have the project identification, and there we have our teams on site. So in all our partner countries, we have our teams on site, and they, of course, they know the private sector. One requirement also for our colleagues on site, they know them, they have the contacts, they exchange. And on the other side, we are working with the AHKs, so they have also the contacts like H2Uppp, for example, that H2Uppp was already in Chile, active in Chile. So it was like an exchange, and then we said, okay, we have another call, so maybe you can develop something, they wanted to develop something. So it was a bit of a mutual understanding, and it's very project specific. So sometimes we do it via our field of action 1, sometimes we do it via our colleagues on site, sometimes with the AHK. So it depends a little bit on the project and also on the context, yeah.
And since the project, is it limited to partner countries? So for example, there's a project that could be interested in Jordan, a desalination project. Would it be eligible to reach out or?
Yeah, I mean, we had and have certain partner countries, but this also changes from time to time. It also changes on depending on the BMWE, so on our donor, right? Where they want to focus on. But as Claudio mentioned, the last call, for example, was specifically for Brazil. The call before was open, I think, for 9 countries. I don't know whether Jordan was included or not. I can't answer, but it could be that if we get an extension and if we go to a 7th call, that, for example, Jordan could also be an eligible country, depending on the BMWE's decision, right? So it really, it's really kind of fluctuating, and also to decision of the BMWE at the end, yeah.
Okay, and the last thing to clarify to the participants, so it's only Morocco and Egypt who are partner countries of H2Up at this moment in the MENA region?
No, also we have Algeria as a partner country, but we
Okay.
currently don't have any PPPs in Algeria running.
Okay, great, all clear. Thank you.
Maybe to motivate your thinking a little bit, I just I'm just showing two questions. So how to integrate H2Uppp findings into your projects? Do you have concrete projects where you can integrate findings from our side? So for example, the carbon sourcing studies, do you need them, or do you need knowledge about off-grid or solutions, or do you need ideas on, as Philip showed, how to use the brine from desalination? I know that the MENA region has to build desalination plants, and there's a second income that could come from those plants. Yeah. So we're wondering, what do you need from our side to integrate your ideas, those ideas from the PPPs into your projects? You could also write that to us, of course. Yeah. So that is always possible. So we're showing here our email addresses as well. And maybe while you are thinking, we put in two questions in the chat here. So we are wondering, how do you like this format? So this is like a marketplace. So we're showing very briefly to you the PPPs that could be of interest. So do you like that, or would you like a different format so you can vote with thumbs up or down? And do you think further PPP calls would create better market ramp up in your region? Then you can also vote here with a thumbs up or down, or with a heart, whatever you like. Just to understand whether what we are showing here and what we are doing in general is of use for you, or how can it be of use for you?
I think this format is very good, actually. For example, the idea of using brine, I can replicate it, for example, in tourism sector in Egypt, because several resorts here have its own destination planets. So if it's applicable for a small scale, when I am doing energy or resource efficiency, I can suggest this technology for them. So I like this format, honestly. And thank you for that.
Thank you for the feedback.
Great. And Ali, please reach out. We can also, I mean, what we can do is connecting you to the private partners we worked with in this project. We can connect you to our country teams to even have more information on this topic, you know, to make benefit of it. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Also, if you are arranging, say, events where you need companies with input and who need to show what have we actually done with H2Uppp with those companies, we can always reach out to them and ask them to turn up at those events. Yeah, so I'm thinking, for example, about the Hydrogen Summit in Marrakesh, where it's always good to have someone who is really hands-on, who really has understood what is the problem, and there are solutions out there that we're offering. Yeah. And we would like to bring those people together.
And maybe one last question, Claudio. We had a question from Osama Fawzi in the chat box. He was asking about the economic feasibility of dehydrogenation and whether it's heat intensive for the project you mentioned for Egypt and Morocco.
Since the PPP is currently running, right, and we do not have any results yet, I think the current status is that I just finished the sites to choose the right sites. I think I cannot answer this question by now, but we expect the results by September, end of September, and also will then have like an event with Hydrogenies together, to a public event to present these results, and happy to share invitation then. And of course, there will also be a report online.
Yeah, and maybe something in general, of course. So chemically, it is necessary to put in heat to regain the hydrogen from the LOHC, and it makes sense if you have waste heat. Yeah. So it makes more sense if you have waste heat, and it's economically more feasible if you have that waste heat. And on the other hand, by binding, you have heat release. So it makes more sense if you can use this released heat. But to get concrete numbers, we would have to take a look at the study that Veit's mentioning. So we're looking at concrete situations where it would make sense. So we're not doing this on a green field, but this needs to be bound into industrial park or at the harbor or something like that in order to make economically sense. So that question is very good.
I can have a comment on this because I participated in a GIZ study for assessing transport option of hydrogen to Germany. And in this study, we assessed liquid organic hydrogen carrier, ammonia, and liquid hydrogen. And liquid organic hydrogen carrier was very competitive. That's why GIZ here in Egypt is interested in this option currently. But that was a theoretical study. That's why it's continued now with hydrogen use.
Sorry, just a question. Was it a study? So it was conducted with GIZ together, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's called PTX MENA.
Was it the one with GFA?
Yes.
Ah, okay,
right.
perfect.
Yeah,
okay,
that's right.
All right, good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if there is more questions, please reach out to us. We're happy to get in touch. Please take a look at our offerings and services, and yeah, so we're always happy to introduce more of the PPPs. So there's a couple of people who are interested. So we're always happy to also focus, maybe topic wise. And please keep us in mind, and we're really happy to go on and showing our results. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.